Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about break and continue. These statements are going to be used mainly with loops, and their purpose is to either interrupt the loop or just jump one iteration. So let's start with the break statement, which can be used to interrupt the loop, or a switch statement. I haven't talked about the switch statement yet. If you want to know more, you can just click on this link that I left here. Maybe later in the course, I'm going to explain this with more details. But for now, let's just see the example using a loop. So going to Visual Studio, I'm just going to start a while loop here. So I'm going to create a variable, so var x equals 0. So while x is less than 10, we are going to do something, and what am I going to do here is just sending x to the console, and then I'm going to increment the value of x. We don't have to go back to our web page to know what's going to happen. We are just going to send x to the console until x is 9. Alright, so what if we wanted to interrupt this loop earlier? If we don't want to change the condition here, we can just use a break statement. So I'm just going to start a conditional here. And I'm going to say that if x equals 5, then I just want to stop this loop. So I'm just going to use the break statement. So no matter what is the condition for the loop, when our code hits this break statement, it is just going to go out of the loop. So going back to our page, refreshing it, we can see that now we stopped at 4. This is because when we sent 4 to the console, right after this, we incremented the value of x, which became 5. So then we entered here and broke out of the loop. I know this sounds like a silly example because, after all, why didn't we just change it here instead of using the break statement? But this was just an example of how you can interrupt a loop. There will be situations in which you are going to want to do this. So let's go now to the next example. The continue is a bit different. We are going to jump out of the loop just like with the break statement. But the difference is that we are not going to interrupt the loop. We are just going to jump the current iteration. So for this example, I'm going to write some code that is going to send to the console only the even numbers from 0 to 20. So I'm going to start a loop, and instead of sending all the numbers to the console, I'm just going to send the even numbers. So how can we do this? Before we start writing this, I just want to talk to you about the modulus operator, which is this one. This operator serves to return the remainder of a division. So if I divide 4 by 2, I will have no remainder. The result is going to be 2, and the remainder is going to be 0. So if I try to do 4 modulus 2, we can see that the remainder is 0. But if I try to divide 4 by 3, I'm going to have the remainder of 1. If I try to divide 10 by 3, I will have a remainder of 1. So this is how the modulus operator works. So this is useful to identify even and odd numbers, because any even number that we do modulus to is going to return in 0. So we can try 10, 12, 14, 16. This is always going to return 0 because there's no remainder when we divide an even number by 2. But any odd number, so let's try 11, it's going to have the result of 1 because every odd number that we divide by 2 is always going to have a remainder of 1. So this is how this operator works. So now that we know this, let's try to write a loop that's going to print only the even numbers. So going to Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to start with a variable called num. This is going to start at 0. And then I'm just going to start a while loop. So while num is less than or equal to 20, because I want to print all the even numbers all the way up to 20. So this is going to be the condition to enter the loop. And this time I'm going to do a bit differently. I'm going to explain this later. So I'm going to increment right at the beginning of the loop. So I'm just going to do num plus plus, and then I'm just going to do console.log, and I'm going to send the number. All right, so if we do this, we know what's going to happen, but let's try it out. We can see that we just sent all the numbers to the console all the way up to 20, actually 21. So yeah, since I'm incrementing the value at the beginning of the loop, then we can just use num is less than 20. So let's try again. All right, so now it's stopping at 20. But we just want to print the even number. So how can we do this? There are two ways of doing this. So first, let's start by using the continue statement. So instead of just doing console.log, let's make a test first. So let's start a conditional here. And we're going to test if num modulus 2 is not 0. So we know that every even number that we do modulus 2 is going to return in 0. So if this doesn't happen, it means that this is an odd number. So if this is an odd number, we don't want to keep running this iteration. So we are just going to use the continue statement. So when the interpreter hits this line, it's just going to jump out of the loop. So it's not going to execute this line and any other line after this. So after the continue, it's just going to jump out of the loop and start again. When it hits the continue again, it jumps out of the loop and starts again. So this is how the continue statement works. So if we do this and refresh the page, we can see that now we only printed the even numbers. Of course, this is not the only way of doing this, because after all, we could have done it like this, just getting the console.log and putting it inside here, and then doing the opposite. So if num modulus 2 equals 0, then we do console.log. If not, we just do nothing. So if we refresh the page, we can see that now we have the same result. So like I always say, there's never just one way of solving a problem. There's never just one solution. But I thought it would be interesting to show you how to solve this using the continue statement so you know how this works. Alright, so I just wanted to quickly show you these two examples. Maybe we're gonna see these statements later in the course, but for now, that was all. So I'll wait for you in the next video.